Am I the butthole for calling my husband insane for missing my dad's funeral just because he didn't want me to wear high heels? My dad passed away 2 weeks ago. Before the funeral, my husband, who has always had issues with height, he's short, asked if I was going to wear high heels. I said yes because those high heels are the only pair of shoes that I have with black color to fit my outfit. He tried to get me to wear other shoes, but I refused and gave him the explanation above. He ranted about how worried he was about people seeing him with me and me looking taller, basically the same old rant. I used to suck it up before, but this time I said no. He said he wouldn't attend the funeral then. I was shocked. I called him insane to miss the funeral over such reason, but he seemed upset and said that I was the insane one for refusing to compromise to make it work. We had a huge fight and he ended up not going. We're not talking to each other as of now, and his family think I was stubborn and should have compromised if I really wanted him there. Not the butthole. His crippling insecurity is more important to him than being there to support his wife at her father's funeral. And even after the funeral, he's not acknowledging that he messed up? Instead, he's doubling down, continuing his tantrum and just refusing to speak to you? I don't know how you recover from this. I'd be out the door, personally. But if you want to try to save the marriage, couples counseling, and therapy for his insecurity issues seems like your best option. I wish women didn't have to pull themselves down to boost men's fragile egos. Not the butthole obviously, but you know that already, don't you? Sigh. This man you married couldn't get over his insecurities to support you at your worst. It cannot be easy dealing with loss of a parent no matter how prepared you are. And his family supports him? Wow. Not the butthole. He cares more about his height than your dad passing away. If he won't support you in one of your hardest days over a pair of shoes, then you should really question he even loves you anymore. Edit, OMG, thank you everyone for all the upvotes. I just logged on to Reddit and I'm surprised this blew up. Am I the butthole for wanting to be paid for babysitting my own daughter? My, 39 male, wife, 34 female, and I live in at a suburban house with our daughter, 10F, Emily. Our neighbor next door, 48M, Walter, is a single father with 2 daughters, 14F and 12F. We have been living here for a little more than 2 years. My wife really likes watching scary movies, but I have never enjoyed them. I get too scared and end up having a bad time, so I prefer to avoid them. Her friends sometimes go with her to the more popular ones, but she also likes older, indies and foreign horror movies. She has always had a hard time finding people that have this niche interest, and that is why it was such a big deal when we met Walter and found out he also shares this tendency. They very quickly started to make plans to watch movies together. I was invited to be a part of this but refused. I prefer to just stay at home babysitting Emily and Walter's daughter while they are in their cinephile reunions. Sometimes they go to movie theaters, but other times they just stay at Walter's place watching stuff at his home cinema. They usually have to go to another town in order to catch a specific function of some weird movie, so it is normal for them to come back very late. They eventually started doing stuff outside of watching movies, like going out for dinner. Walter invited all of us, including the kids, to go with him to a restaurant that a friend of him owned, but I said no because it was too expensive. I don't like that kind of places because I feel they are a waste of money and didn't think the kids would enjoy it either. I insisted on staying with the kids and let the 2 of them go be themselves. This has become a regular thing, and it is in a way a good deal for me because Walter pays for my wife's dinner and she can't no longer complain about me not taking her to fancy restaurants. As both their movie and dinner nights had become so common, I have grown a little tired of the burden of constantly babysitting the girls. I talked to my wife and Walter about it, and he explained that he usually does not like leaving his daughters with babysitters. He says he is really comfortable knowing that they are being watched by an experienced father like me instead of some teenage girl. He nevertheless agreed that it was too much of a load for me and offered to start paying me a standard babysitter fee each time he goes out with my wife. I thought that was a fair approach to the issue, but my wife was fully against it. She says I should not be paid for babysitting my own daughter nor the daughters of a close friend of our family like Walter. We have been arguing about this, but she insists on this notion and it not open to change. She even gets mad every time I talk to her about this. Walter promised me that he will convince her, but he does not seem to have been able to do so either. Am I the butthole? You're the butthole for several reasons, 2 of which are calling taking care of your own kid babysitting and not really caring about your marriage. Don't be surprised if your wife ends up leaving you for Walter, if they're not already having an affair. Your wife is dating your neighbor and you think he should pay you? Oh man, you're the butthole. Walter and your wife might have a common interest, but they've tried to involve you in things outside of that, like going out to eat, and you refused, and now you're complaining about sitting at home and moping and babysitting, which you chose to do. Also, ticking the box of taking your wife out for a nice dinner by letting someone else do it? So you're the butthole. Am I the butthole for selling my house and not renewing the lease of a family with a sick child? Throwaway because I have too many friends on Reddit. I, 47 male, inherited a property from my father 11 years ago. For the past 5 years I've been renting the house to a nice family with a young child, 5 male. They've been great tenants and there haven't been any issues. A month ago I was approached by a realtor about selling my property. He had a buyer who was interested and was ready to offer $60,000 over market because of the location. This was an opportunity I couldn't pass up. My tenants have a lease through mid-March. I've always renewed every year around this time. I contacted the husband, Michael, and let him know I would not be renewing this time. To say that he was upset was an understatement. It turns out that he and his wife are currently in hospice with their son who has a terminal heart condition. The doctors have given him a month or 2 to live. I knew the boy was sick but I never knew it was so serious. Michael told me that there is no way right now that they can pack up the house and find a new rental in time. The hospice where they are currently in residence is over 3 hours away and he thinks it's terribly unfair that I expect him to sacrifice any of the time he has left with their son in order to move. He called me a heartless sociopath. I suggested that they have a family member take care of the packing and finding a new place, but the only family they have around is the wife's elderly father. I'm not sure that I believe this because they are too young to only have one parent between them and I'm sure there are siblings somewhere. I then suggested they hire a moving company to handle the packing and try to find a rental online, or possibly an Airbnb for a while. He claims he can't afford a moving company because of the son's medical expenses. I feel bad about the situation and realize I'm making things harder for them, but it's not my responsibility to take care of them. I've given them the legally required notice. My wife thinks that because of the money I'll be making that I should offer to pay for a moving company and an Airbnb after they leave the hospice. I don't want to do this because it would cost me a big chunk of the profit from selling the house, and again, their situation is not my responsibility. This is the risk people take when they rent. My wife is now giving me the cold shoulder. So, am I the butthole for selling my house and not renewing the lease of a family with a sick child? Edit. The purchase agreement has been signed. I'm not selling to a developer but to a family that needs to move to the area for their son's schooling. I'll call the buyer and explain the situation and then, if they choose, they can contact the tenants and make arrangements. It's a tough call. In terms of business, I get it. Greed is a thing. But you can't blame your wife for seeing you differently. You just showed her your true character. Going with my heart, you're the butthole. You're the butthole. You aren't making things harder for them, you are potentially making them miss time with a child who won't be here for long. You are well within your right to do so and probably won't give it another thought once the money hits your bank account. It sounds like your wife is a different kind of person, and good for her. Also, people aren't taking a risk by renting, they probably just haven't inherited homes from their rich daddies. Your humanity only costs $60,000. Good to know. It is possible to be well within your rights, and also in butthole. Not easy, but possible. And you have achieved this. Congratulations, you're the butthole. Edit, thanks for the awards and the upvotes. I wouldn't have believed that 10k people would see this, let alone upvote it. Am I the butthole for high-fiving a stranger who humiliated my BF? My BF and I go to the climbing gym regularly. He is really into it and I just started and climbing a few times a week. He's stupidly competitive about it and quietly insults beginners who are not as good, which makes me feel self-conscious because I'm a beginner. Last night we were at the climbing gym again and he was doing a V6. There was about 6 people taking turns on the problem, probably because it's a newly installed route and they were all failing. Then a girl came and flashed it. She made it so easy, but at the end she didn't hold the final hold for 5 seconds and my BF called her out after she was done. Holding the last hold for 5 seconds is supposed to be the right way of finishing a route, but she was doing it so easily she definitely could have. I think he was just being salty because she did it when he couldn't. She laughed and told him he didn't even start the problem correctly and walked off. I gave her a high five because she was walking towards me and did amazing at the problem, and knocked my BF off his high horse, and she was surprised but high-fived me. My BF turned to me and gave me a WTF look and wouldn't talk to me the rest of the night. When we were heading home he ranted that I couldn't be trusted to watch his back if I chose to take a stranger's side over him. I was shocked that's what he took from the climb and told him she shouldn't have nitpicked her when she clearly climbed it correctly, and he got mad and argued I was supposed to take his side over people I don't even know. Not the butthole. He was being petty, jealous, and a bit sexist, calling her out. None of his business, and she told him off. Not the butthole. Is your BF 10 years old? Not the butthole. If your boyfriend doesn't like being called out on being a petty sore loser, he should stop being a petty sore loser. Am I the butthole for making my girlfriend go after her baby daddy for child support and ruining his life? I met my girlfriend on Tinder and we were not exclusive to begin with. We get along great and I thought we had a future. She got pregnant and we were kind of excited to start a family. When the baby was born it was very obviously not mine. I did not sign the birth certificate. I also did not break up with her. But I also told her that I would not be making myself financially responsible for the baby. We had planned for her to take a year off work to be with the baby. She had already taken her maternity leave. I said she needed to go after the father for child support. She didn't want to because they were friends. I said I understood, but then she had to take full financial responsibility for the kid. I would help her with all the child rearing like changing diapers and feedings and the like, but not for paying for any of it. She agreed. She ran through her savings in about 6 months. She talked to me about helping her with baby formula and stuff and I said no. That isn't our agreement. She called him and asked for money and he gave her a few $1,000s to pay for baby stuff but told her not to contact him again. That is when she understood their friendship. So she went after him for child support. His fiancée found out about the whole thing and is thinking of breaking things off. The child support is enough that the baby will be well taken care of and will not affect our finances. He called her crying because we effed up his life. He said that I could easily afford to take care of them and that I'm in butthole for dragging his life through the mud. She feels terrible about it and blames me for not just stepping up and considering her a single mom. I love my girlfriend and the baby and I have no problem raising the baby. But I don't think I should be held financially responsible when the father has resources and tried to evade responsibility. Am I the butthole? Not the butthole. He's the father, he should be responsible. However, if she's going through her finances without thinking about her responsibilities and she initially tried to pin the baby on you, is that not a red flag of potential issues that may crop up? Proceed with caution, OP, I suspect you're in for a bumpy road ahead. Not the butthole. It's good that you are willing to be a family with your girlfriend and her baby. And according to you, you could afford to support them. But that does not absolve the biological father of responsibility for the maintenance of his child. And what if, God forbid, something happened to you and you could not afford it anymore? What happens then? All three of you are buttholes and none of you should be in relationships nor engaged in child rearing. I love my girlfriend and the baby and I have no problem raising the baby. But I don't think I should be held financially responsible when the father has resources and tried to evade responsibility. Really nicely put, not the butthole. Am I the butthole for yelling to be let out of the car when my boyfriend's dad turned on the one feature I asked him not to? I spent last night with my boyfriend's family. We'd gone out to dinner and his dad was gonna drive. So my boyfriend, me, his parents, and his brother all squeezed into his dad's car and we went to the restaurant. I had a few drinks and his dad had too, since he was gonna drive. But on the way back his dad started asking me, "You work on self-driving cars?" "Yeah, I do. I'm a systems engineer and have job hopped between a handful of autonomy companies." He started asking me how I liked his Tesla and I joked, "Just fine as long as you're the one driving it." And he asked me what I thought about FSD, which he just bought. He asked if he should turn it on. I said not with me in the car, and he then laughed and asked how I was still so scared when I work with this stuff every day. I was like, it's because I. But stopped when he pulled over and literally started turning it on. I was like, I'm not kidding, let me out of the car if you're gonna do this, and my boyfriend's dad and brother started laughing at me, and my boyfriend still wasn't saying anything. His dad was like, "It'll be fine," and I reached over my boyfriend's little brother and tried the door handle, which was locked. I was getting mad, and probably more so because I was tipsy, and I yelled at him, "Let me the frick out." My boyfriend started trying to tell me to calm down because I was drunk, and I told him that it didn't fricking matter, I'd be out of here sober or drunk. He told me to stop cussing in front of his little brother, and I told him to tell his dad to cut his crap out and I wouldn't have anything to cuss over. His dad was like, "Fine." I didn't realize it'd be a big deal and drove home normally, but things have been tense as hell. We got back to his house and he was mad at me for overreacting the first time I met his family all together. I got angry and was like, I'm not the one who decided to do the one thing that I said I'm not comfortable with in the car, just after I asked him not to laugh at me. He said that his dad used the car a lot, and it was fine, and I asked him, since we're both rock climbers, would he ever get on a route with his car bender that doesn't lock? What if someone says they do it all the time and it's fine? He was like, absolutely not, but that's different, and I was like, it's literally not, just like we don't know any climbers who do that crap, Nobody in my field that I know would stay in that car. He got mad and told me to go to sleep. I was drunk. But honestly, today I woke up sober and I stand by what I did, like I wasn't comfortable with what was happening and my boyfriend's family all laughed and started trying to do the one fricking thing I said no to. Like whatever that thing is, it's fricked up. Am I the butthole for yelling at my boyfriend's dad to let me out of the car? Edit, I'm not trying to get into fights about who my favorite billionaire is or isn't. Take that somewhere else if you want fanboy arguments. Though for the record my answer is none of them. Not the butthole. They crossed a boundary you very respectfully put in place. That's not okay no matter what your boundary was. Also, unrelated, but what is going on with the self-driving feature that nobody who works on it will be in the car with it on? Immediately not the butthole. When someone tells me to let them out of my car, I don't hesitate. If it makes you that uncomfortable, then he should have just waited until you weren't in the car. Am I the butthole for telling my son to get over the divorce? My ex-wife, Natalie, and I had an amicable but not loving marriage. We had 2 children, Michael, 28 male, and Lily, 30 female. When Michael was about 10 years old, she and I saw that we no longer had romantic feelings, but a beautiful friendship. But for reasons at the time, mainly our children, we decided to continue the marriage until our children left home. Basically nothing has changed on a daily basis, we were still the same couple as always, but we didn't force something we didn't want. When Michael moved away for college and home permanently, at age 19, we decided to make the gradual move and finally make our divorce official. Michael didn't handle it well. For months he tried to convince us to try couples therapy, intervention, that it was a bad phase in the marriage and not to sign the divorce paper until we were sure. We explained together, separately, that it wasn't a bad phase and that we stayed together for the good of the family only, etc. Over time, he conformed, but hasn't accepted until today. I am currently married and so is Natalia. We have a great relationship and often spend Christmas and New Year's together with our children. What happened? Michael is engaged to Liam and we recently had dinner with him, his in-laws, fiancé and Natalie to celebrate the engagement. Michael still has a habit of making spiteful comments about the divorce and how traumatizing his parents' experience of getting divorced was. Several times, I said that this was something that hurt us to hear, because above all, my ex and I cherish that our children don't suffer from our decision. During dinner, we were talking to his in-laws and they asked how long we'd been apart and how good we had a relationship, etc. Michael at some point said, "It wasn't such a good thing for the family. It was a traumatizing experience to see your inspiration as a couple break up and your family fall apart." To say that Natalie and I were embarrassed that he said it in front of his in-laws is not necessary. I had my limit and I said, "Look, Mike, I understand your feelings, but it's been 9 years that your mother and I haven't been together and you didn't even live with us during this process. We are already in another moment of our lives. I think it's over time to get over it and turn the page." He was quiet and stayed that way for most of dinner, saying only what was necessary. Later, I got a text from him criticizing me, saying I should respect his feelings and he was just venting, which was a valid thing, and I shouldn't say that in front of his in-laws. Am I the butthole? English is not my first language and I'm not an expert at it. Google Translate helped. When I said that our children didn't suffer, I mean we tried everything that wasn't the worst scenario and that they didn't suffer so much. Obviously there would be damage, but that it was as little as possible. Although many say it was a lie, and that's okay, it was the best scenario for several reasons as well besides the children at the time. If your son wants to vent, he needs to go to a therapist. What your son was doing was criticizing you in front of his future in-laws. That's not right, and you were very gracious in the manner in which you corrected him. Not the butthole. Not the butthole, venting at such an event is not appropriate. He should seek the help he needs if he still can't accept the situation. You have a right to your own happiness and you've made every effort to make the situation work. Am I the butthole for causing a scene when my husband's family showed up for dinner again? This evening, I made a scene in front of my husband's family while they ate dinner at our house. My husband's family came over for dinner the second time this week. They were also over last week and the week before. Typically, I am not consulted on these visits, I am just informed of them, sometimes with little or no notice at all. The visit 2 weeks ago had 30 people, this one I had lots of notice. Last week was 15. During these previous visits, I feel I was a good and welcoming host. I made food, cleaned up, made conversation, etc. This afternoon, I was exhausted and not feeling well after a really busy work week and sleep issues. My husband and I have a young daughter who also came home from daycare coughing. We've been dealing with bouts of sickness plus some really big transitions in the last few weeks. Around 3 p.m., My husband informed me that family members were coming over, 6 in total. I told him I wasn't feeling well and was upset he didn't ask me about it before confirming. I was also upset because we had only had one dinner together this week. The previous night he had been at a work dinner and was over at his dad's earlier in the week, plus we'd already had the family. He initially disregarded me and left the room, but he later apologized and reassured me that next week would be quiet and we would spend time together and I could just be upstairs tonight and not have to worry about cleaning anything up. Plus dinner was taken care of already. I had an early dinner with my daughter and put her to bed at 7, which is when his family showed up. I stayed upstairs in bed initially but went down and briefly explained I was not feeling well and our daughter was sleeping. However, there was a lot of noise with kids running around who woke up my daughter, so I went down again around 9. At this point, my husband was slurring his words drunk because when he gets together with his dad, they drink. When I realized he was slurring his words, I lost it. I asked him to stop drinking, in front of his family, because he would be grumpy and hungover the next day. I told him I was tired of it and tired of cleaning up after everyone. Honestly, I can't remember everything I said because I was raging, but I do know that I didn't swear or yell, though I was raising my voice. I told him that his behavior was unhealthy and that it was not okay. I basically had a heated argument with him in front of his family, clearly making them feel uncomfortable. But they also knew I was sick yet stayed until after 10 p.m. while the kids ran around making noise. They stayed late earlier in the week too and at that time didn't offer any help. My husband and his dad are both passed out now. The other family and kids have left. I'm embarrassed that I lost my composure, but I am also just so fed up. I feel knots in my gut and guilt for not holding it in. But I feel like I've been holding a lot in and I couldn't contain it any longer. Not the butthole. Your husband is an inconsiderate butthole. And not consulted? That is absolutely unacceptable. It's your house and these things need to be agreed on before being planned. But the part that really infuriates me is, if these are his dinners/gatherings, and he refuses to even include you in the planning, or even agreement to have people over, why are you cooking for and cleaning up after? Why on earth isn't he taking care of the food and cleanup? Also, getting drunk constantly at family dinners is a huge red flag to me. Probably because my father's side of the family has a lot of alcoholism, and they're the only people I know who do exactly that. Not the butthole. You can't hold this in forever. There sounds like some serious alcoholism and dysfunction going on. Seek counseling. Am I the butthole for refusing to sell a family heirloom so someone in the family can receive medical treatment? My great-great-grandmother passed away a few months ago. She didn't have a lot of money or assets to her name, but what she did have was an expensive engagement ring. There have been many arguments for years over who gets this ring. It's a massive point of tension, and the conversations get ugly pretty fast. All of the aunties and cousins think they have a right to it. With Dma right in front of them they speak dirty over it. It's honestly disgusting. I am sort of the black sheep of the family. Only as my parents have moved country when I was young and I have only seen everyone a small handful of times. Otherwise, everyone else is super close. To the surprise of everyone, the ring was left to me. Everyone including me was shocked, many angry, and I have had many snotty emails and phone calls about how it's not actually mine. While I am blood, I am not part of the family like everyone else is. I get it, but it still stung. One person in the family does have a serious illness. She needs life-saving medical care that she can't afford. Everyone is now begging me to sell this ring and pay for it as it's only fair. I told them, nicely with a lot more words, no, and while I don't want her to die, everyone can suck eggs. Of course that didn't go down well and everyone is calling me a murderer. Am I the butthole here? Not the butthole. I bet your great-grandmother left it to you because you weren't part of the arguments in front of her and because you had left the country so it would be harder for your relatives to come after you. You are under no obligation to sell that ring, and quite frankly, it probably would not sell enough to cover the medical expenses. Unfortunately, resale prices are not usually close to purchase or insurance value. If you have some extra money and feel generous, you could chip in what you can afford. Just know that your relationship with these relatives will be permanently damaged, but it sounds like that this won't be a loss for you. Not the butthole. There are plenty of other ways to raise money. If they can band together to jerk, they can band together to brainstorm a better idea to save the life they're so concerned about.